The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. Real quick, go ahead and raise your hand if you can hear me. Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead and get this party started so we can end on time. We will be done at 11:15, and as way of a reminder, this webinar will be recorded and we will post it to the State Department website afterwards. And just a reminder, it takes a couple of days for us to get that all recorded and uploaded to the website, so I thank you guys for your patience. This is the State Department of Education Annual Performance Report for 2016-17, and today's Friday, February 17th. And what we're going to do today is just talk about the APR, the Annual Performance Report. And as you guys know, I'm Andrew Fletcher, the coordinator of the 21st CCLC program, and with me is Camille McCashlin, the program specialist.
Good morning.
And a quick little story for you before we jump into it. Every morning, my son and I, we like to talk to Alexa, which is the Amazon personal assistant thing. And so we tell her good morning, and she usually tells us the weather and an inspirational quote or something like that. And one of the things that she shared with us today is that today is Random Acts of Kindness, and she played this lovely song for us. All right, and I'll keep going. So just a reminder that, you know, as you go throughout your day to perform random acts of kindness for people and do great things in the world. I also want to throw out a couple of quick shout outs of one, Preston School District. Their after school program does a robotics club, and they recently went to a competition and placed second out of 37 teams. So congratulations, and they were one of 3 teams that were junior high only, and one of 2 teams that were undefeated in the preliminary rounds. And so congratulations to them. And I know that Kristen was super excited, and she was a little nervous because going into it, she didn't see herself as being a robotics person, and so she didn't know how it would fare out, but congratulations to them. Another one real quick, City of Dubois is, I sit on a couple of different technical working groups, and one of them is for Y4Y on summer learning programs. And one of the ladies on this conference call that we were on, she said, "Oh, I was just in Idaho, like last week, just barely." And we got to talking on the conference call, and I said, "Oh, what were you there for?" And she said, "Well, I flew into Sun Valley, and I went to somewhere in the middle of nowhere, this place, Arco, Idaho, I think it was called." And I said, "Oh, did you go to Craters of the Moon?" And she said, "Yeah," and we got to talking, and she came out to experience the National Parks Recreation has a grant with Craters of the Moon, and they partner with City of Dubois, their after-school program, and they did this snowshoeing expedition. And so she talked about how cool it was and everything like that, and it was just a fun time for me of like, oh yeah, here it is on a national level, somebody from DC came all the way into Idaho and had this great experience with the after-school program. And then the third one is Mountain View School District. They are a star-rated child care program through Idaho AEYC, and they are also in the works to build their own facility, their own youth program facility on the school district grounds for their after-school program and pre-K and child care program. So congratulations to them. And let me just tell you guys, I love it when you send us information about what's going on in your programs. Keep us updated. I love it when you guys send pictures, because then we can kind of get out of the numbers sometimes and really see what's happening and hear all these great stories that you guys are doing. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into it. The agenda for the day, since we love agenda items, I'll keep them short and simple. We're going to really cover two things. The first thing is important dates for APR and then what the requirements for the APR is. And of course, as we go through this, feel free to type in questions and we'll address any questions that you guys may have it towards the end. So one thing that I found out yesterday is that the U.S. Department of Ed unveiled their windows for the reporting for the 21 APR Tactile Group Data Collection System. And so here are the dates. So last week we went over that webinar, and it was still kind of unsure what the dates would be. But March 16th till April 15th, you have to report your summer 2016 term. And so that would be last summer's information. So looking at May, June, whenever you started your summer program, until that August timeframe, whenever you ended your summer program. And then April 16th to July 31st, the fall 2016 term will be open. And again, that's the first day of program for the 2016 year until January 31st, which we just barely closed out of. And then August 1st through December 15th will be the spring 2016 term, which started February 1st and will close your last day of program. So if you look at your schedule, you will not have to do any reporting over the summer. Just make sure that you stay up to date on when these windows open and close, and so that way you can make sure that you get your information into the 21 APR data collection system. I will also go through probably next week and input all of our round 11 people because you currently do not have access. Another quick little side note, if your 21 APR Tactile system has centers that you've created that no longer exist or you accidentally duplicated a center, let me know and we can delete that out. I have confirmation from 21 APR Tactile that we can delete out your account and we'd recreate it, so then those centers don't show up anymore, because as some of you guys have come to find out that if you accidentally put in a center, to me it flags it that you have not entered data, you have not entered information, and so then I hound you with these emails of, hey, you're not getting your stuff in. So the cleaner that we can keep it, the easier it makes life. So with that said, we'll move on to our important dates for our SDE APR. First, remember that April 12th is the directors meeting in Sun Valley, and we will also go over a little bit of the APR process in Sun Valley, a little bit more in depth. I just want to have this webinar to kind of get your guys' wheels turning and thinking, so then you guys can come to the meeting with any questions or concerns that you may have.
And I just want to let you guys know, I sent you an email yesterday stating that space was limited. That was not a publicity push. That is literal. We are selling out of this conference very quickly, and because it is a required meeting for you, I need you to get registered today so that you have a space there. If you have not secured your lodging, you'll want to get that done right away, as well as that is very limited. We encourage you to group up, to go into condos. That is all that is available now in Sun Valley, are condos and the houses. The individual rooms have sold out.
All right, perfect. And of course, if you have any questions about Sun Valley or the prevention conference, you can contact Camille and she'll answer those. The other big important date to remember is that June 30th is when the APR is due to the SDE. And so June 30th is our last day of this grant cycle, and then July 1st starts our new one. So that is when the APR is due. So let's kind of talk about what's due, what requirements we have. So basically there's two different parts of the APR, of the annual performance report. The first part is that is closing out, so reporting on your program operations for 2016-17. So, closing out your budget, turning in all your data, and all of that fun stuff. And then the second part is submitting your program operations for 2017-18. And really this is an opportunity for you guys of one, to set your detailed budget for the next year, and two, we are on a 5-year grant, but each year we understand that you can make adjustments, tweaks, improvements to your program, and so here's where you can submit that plan to make adjustments or make those tweaks that's going to help your life and the lives of your kids, to run more smoothly or to try something new in your program. Of course, we don't want it to be so extreme that it's a 180, totally looks different, but it could be, hey, through trial and error, we've learned that this activity didn't work, and this is the activity we want to try for next year. Perfect. Of course, this is another reason why we're having this webinar, so you can start to have these conversations now in February with your staff, with your students, of what do we want next year to look like. So we'll focus first, though, on closing out the year. So closing out that 2016-17 year, there's two things that we close out. Is one, fiscal management, and then two is our statewide objectives and data management. And so with the fiscal management of closing out the budget for the year, let's look at our important things. So on June 30th, 75% of grant funds must be submitted for reimbursement. And then 100% of the grant funds must be obligated. And down here I have our little reference to the subgrantee guidance if you want to go back and look through the subgrantee guidance for more detail of what that means. But you might be thinking, what does that mean? So what does this mean to have 75% submitted for reimbursement and 100% obligated? Well, this little guy, this is you, the director, and it's June 30th. So let me kind of help break this out, because I see that there's kind of 3 different things that are happening with the budget. Is first, your program tracking. So these are those expenses that have gone through the GRA, have been billed to your district or organization, but it also includes expenses that might not have been billed or invoiced to the district yet. Those credit card charges haven't gone through. So this is what you've actually spent out. Okay. The second thing is what the district number shows. And so this is all those things that have been billed to the district. However, it might include some expenses that have not been requested for reimbursement yet, that they haven't gone through the GRA yet. And so that brings us to the third thing, is the GRA, the grant reimbursement application. So this amount, and this is the amount that Camille and I, that we look at of how much money you have left or how much money that you've requested. Because we can't see your funds in the program tracking or on the district level. We just see what's gone through the GRA. So with that, when we talk about June 30th, you need 100% of your funds obligated, so that district amount. That doesn't mean that it has to come through the GRA yet, but that it has to be invoiced and billed to the district by June 30th. And then 75% of those grant funds requested for reimbursement through the GRA. Anything to add? Okay. So I hope that kind of lines it out, that 100% is invoiced into the district, but that doesn't mean that, June 29th you have to hurry and scramble and get that last GRA request, because you still have a little bit of time to make those final requests. Follow that process and everybody's happy. So obligations, you might be wondering, what does an obligation mean? So an obligation is an order placed for property of services, contracts, and similar transactions during a given period, which for us is that July 1st, 2016 to June 30th, 2017, that requires payment during the same or a future period. So, easily said, have all of your money invoiced or billed by June 30th. Now, of course, you have until September 15th to make those last final drawdowns on the previous year. So with closing out the fiscal management, because you might get into the situation of, as you get down there, we understand that we want to keep as much money as we can in your district or your organization. Really the goal is let's supply you guys with the funds that you need to be successful to operate programs of quality and that benefit the lives of our students. However, you might come through and you might say, oh, we went 2 months without having a program director, and we've accumulated these funds that we just don't need or that we don't use. Or within that June 30th deadline, we were unable to obligate the full 100% of those funds. So whatever's remaining will come back to the state. And here's what we do with it is we take those funds and then we put it back into the grant competition and we push it back out to the field. So I mean, really, when we talk about being reasonable with our funds, really think about what is it that our program needs, to be successful. But if you don't need something, don't feel bad about giving it back to the state, because we push it back out to the field, and really it just stretches our dollars farther so we can serve more kids. It doesn't impact you in any future funding. We won't look at it and say, oh, since you gave $10,000 back last year, we're now going to deduct $10,000 from future funds. It's not like that, because we understand that sometimes things do come up. So with this, do you want to talk about this letter real quick?
Absolutely. So in order for us to remove the funds from your obligation within the grant reimbursement application or the GRA, we have to have a formal letter from your superintendent or organizational leader releasing those funds. So Andrew has put together this template here that just states that we have our organization, whatever your organization is, whether it's a school district, nonprofit, or municipality, has funds in this amount that are left. They acknowledge that these funds are going to go back to the state, and then just an acknowledgement of we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we're spending the funds appropriately within the required timelines, and then a signature. This needs to be on your organization's letterhead, and again, signed by the organizational chair. In most cases, it's going to be your superintendent. If we could have that in as soon as possible, that helps us reallocate the funds. Idaho, because of the way that we have our funding structured, most of you know we're running a year behind in our funding, and it's going to take us years and years to get caught up. But we're to the point right now where we will not have to send these funds back to the federal government. We will be able to turn them back around, put them right back into programming here in Idaho. So as you look at what's happening, if you need to have a conversation with me about, hey, Camille, we're not sure that we're going to be able to spend all these funds, we might have funds here, please let me know sooner rather than later, and we can work through that process.
And so, of course, this letter, though, is not due June 30th, because we understand you still might be figuring things out come that time frame. But like Camille said, the sooner that you know how much you don't need, then the sooner that we can move forward. And the other thing is with this is we cannot award you new grant funds until all of last year's funds have either been spent out and reimbursed or released back to the state. So it's like, once you get that done, you send this little letter and say, yeah, here's your $355 that we didn't spend. Then we can now clear last year's stuff and then make the award letters for next year. Okay, so let me show you, if I were ever a director, here's what I would do. Just to kind of keep an eye on it, is May 2nd, when I go to do my May drawdown, which most likely will cover expenses for March and maybe a little bit of April, that's there. I would do the math of how much money I have left, what's the percentage left of my grant. And to do that is I look at the remaining award amount, so how much money do I have left, divided by the total award amount. And so let me give you an example. So here we have my approved workbook, and I can see, my grant was approved to have $170,468. So there's my total award amount. And then I would go in and look right here. So I'm looking at my April drawdown, and I can see what's my total grant remaining. I currently have $77,318. So my original award amount is $170,000, and my total remaining is $77,000. So I would divide those together, and I would see I still currently, so my May drawdown, I have 45% of my grant remaining. Okay, so I'm sitting comfortably 45%. In May, I might want to start looking at, okay, where do I have some expenses? that either didn't happen, maybe I budgeted $6,500 in iPads and the bill was only $5,000, so I know I have $1,500 there. Where do I start looking at what's remaining? Where do I want to put that? What do I want to do? And so forth. And then, so right there I would say, oh yeah, I'm sitting pretty comfortable, 45%, with April, May, and June expenses left. So then do the same thing when we hit June. I do my June drawdown, which covers April and May expenses, maybe not all of May, but some of May, and do the same thing. So looking at my June month in my workbook there, I can see that I still have $46,000 remaining. And of course, look at the original amount divided by our total remaining, and then I could see, oh, I have 27% of my grant left without my June drawdown in here yet. So in this scenario, I'm sitting comfortably. I feel good. Oh yeah, I've requested my 75%. Life is great. Of course, if this number is going to be higher, then that's where I'm going to want to look and make sure that we've spent out the money, that we've requested it, and so forth, or unfortunately made a plan to revert it back to the state. So that's kind of the way that I would go through to track it. And remember that as you get there, you might say, oh yeah, we've kind of overshot a little bit in supplies and we undershot in equipment, so we need to do a budget revision to move some of our funds towards supplies or move towards professional or personnel costs, things like that. So budget revisions are allowed. The deadline for budget revisions are June 15th. June 15th. Okay, so remember, the quicker you can do a budget revision, the less stress it's going to be for you and everybody else involved. So if you wait all the way till that June 15th deadline, it might get a little hectic for you of figuring it out, but you have until June 15th to do that. Oh yeah.
And just FYI, I've had a lot of questions. So the budget revision form is actually not part of your workbook. It's found on the 21st CCLC website. Andrew's going to pull that up to show you where it's at. So down in the fiscal management section under the files, you'll see the budget justification workbook revision template. We've also got an example there for you so you can see how to submit those. One question that's been asked is, Andrew, will you open up that, either the template or the example? Is the very first column asks for the approved budget. That is your total approved budget from that very first tab on your budget workbook. So that's the numbers that you would put in there. Then in the middle, you would put what you're doing, why you're moving these funds. And remember, we've put this over on the side, remember to show us both sides of the revision. Why you have funding remaining in a category and what you're going to do with it in the category you're moving it to. Include that detail. That's what slows down budget revisions. That's why we have to be returned, is because that detail is not included. Then you would save this document and email it to me, and I will review those in the order that they are received.
Okay, so one thing that I want to make you guys aware is you might come up and you might have some money left on the table that you might want to use. Well, one thing is they are doing a 2017 21st CCLC Summer Institute. This is hosted by U.S. Department of Ed, and this is an allowable conference to attend. So if this is something where you have some extra funds left on the table, and you do want to do this professional development, whether you or your staff, this is a good conference to go to. It's all focused on 21st programs, and it addresses all levels of state coordinators, program directors, and then frontline staff, and has a variety of workshops from community-based organization focuses to school district organization focuses, and so forth. So the dates for that is July 25th through 27th, and that will be in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And a couple of things for that is, since the deadline is so close, flights may be billed to the 2016-17 grant funds. So even though it's dipping into past that July 1st time frame, you may bill your flights to that just because the deadline is so close, and we know that if you're going to go to this conference, you'll probably purchase your flights before that July deadline. However, your lodging and per diem and your time, if you're being paid to go there, would all be billed to the 2017-18 grant funds. So that would be something that you're going to want to make sure that you budget for if you go to this, or if any of your staff go. The other nice thing about it is that it has no registration fee for the conference. It's entirely free, and as many of you know, a lot of our national conferences are $300–400, so that'll save a huge chunk of change of not having a registration fee.
However, note that no meals are provided at meetings provided by federal and state agencies.
Well, last year though they did provide. Last year they did provide lunch because the after-school
network provided it.
Yeah, the After-School Alliance provided lunch. But generally speaking, there is nothing to eat or nibble on, and so you're on your own. Okay. The other thing with closing out the budget is we will send out an Excel sheet which will look just like the budget workbook, the budget revision, except it'll be an in-kind match worksheet. So you can see down here this little tab will say in-kind, and up here it'll say in-kind match report, but it'll look exactly the same. And you will report out on your 30% in-kind match for the year of 2016-17. Okay, are there any questions about closing out the budget for the 2016-17 year? Perfect. No questions are either the best thing or the worst thing, because either Camille and I explained it perfectly and you have no questions, or nobody's really listening. Okay, moving on. So the next thing would be is close out of the statewide objectives. Of course, this depends on which statewide track you chose for this year, because as a way of reminder, remember we made that transition to be in line with ESSA of what our statewide objectives are going to look like, and a few of you did choose to stay on the previous objectives, and so yours would look a little bit different. But for those of you who chose the new objectives, here's what we're looking at: of family engagement and parent involvement, so offering your 5 family literacy services and 3 parent involvement opportunities. Targeted services, so looking at your total days of operation and your regular program participants, and then continuous improvement, which focuses on professional development, is what we'll report out on. So with that, all of these we will look at Compass reports. And I will show you how, or I'll show you which Compass reports to pull. If you are interested, and if anybody has the question to do so, I will show how to pull these reports at the end of this meeting, just because I feel like, oh, we pulled the report so many times, I don't know how many more times I can show it, but I definitely will. So, your family and parent service summary report. So this will show, you'll pull this report, it'll show all your family literacy services and your parent involvement opportunities. And so what we would be looking at here is that you have 5 family literacy services offered. And so here in this example, you can see here's the date, here's what the service was, and then here's how many students participated in that. So that's the first report, is the family and parent service summary report. The second one is the student service summary report. So that's done the exact same method. The only difference is instead of looking at students, or looking at parents, you're looking at student services. And it'll show the date, the service type of after school, before school, pre-K, all of that, and then how many students participated in that day. The third thing, so under targeted services, is looking at the regular program participant report, and so this would be pulling up the service detail of how many students attended our 30 or more days. And then the fourth report that we'll be pulling up is looking at what staff professional development you offered here. And so in this report, you can see again the date, the staff professional development that was offered, what type it was, how many total staff you had, and then how long this was offered for. So those are all the things that we track in the Compass system that we will be pulling out to report for our SDE APR. So there will be some other things that we'll ask that'll be more quantitative in nature, that'll be more or qualitative in nature, that'll be more narrative, and that's one, some program success stories of what's gone well in your program. What do you feel like you've mastered this year? Two, there'll be some questions about some frustrations or barriers, areas for improvement, things like that of how can we identify what's not working and make the improvements. And then this last one is justifications if needed. And so justifications are those things of, it's up to you to look at your data and make the justifications for us, so then that way we know what we're looking at. So if you only offered 89 days, and that's because you had 50 snow days this year and life's been hectic, this is where you need to make this justification. Hopefully if that's the case, you've contacted the State Department beforehand, and we've already had this conversation and seen the calendar, but we understand that sometimes things come up. But really it's you making that connection, making that communication for us, because we don't know. So there will be a section for justifications, and there was one last year as well. I think that some people utilized it really well. Others, I think it was a little confusing on what was expected in the justifications, and it's not a mandatory thing. It's just if you feel like there's something that's skewing your numbers or something sideswiped you and you need to let us know, this is where you let us know. But if everything's great and life's good, you don't need to make any justifications. Okay. So that is closing out the previous year. So now moving on to part 2, and I will address the questions at the end of this. There have been a couple. But the next part is the program operations for 2017-18. So again, I said this is the part where really you can look at what happened last year or in previous years and make those improvements, make those tweaks to better your program and make your life easier. So the first thing is there will be the workbook for next year, which will follow the same thing as this year, where you'll go in and you'll say, oh, here is, oops, this is the budget revision template. Imagine this is the budget workbook. Sorry about that. But this is where you'll go in and say, this is, how much we need in personnel. Here's all of our staff. Break it out. Here's our equipment. Those items that are 250 or higher. Here's what we anticipate we'll need for transportation and so forth. And let me tell you, for those programs that are detailed in their budget, life is a lot less stressful for them. Because they say, oh, this is what I've outlined to do. I did it. Boom, life is easy, it flowed. So the more detail and the more accuracy you can put in your own budget, the better. I would say don't just copy and paste your budget from the previous year, because things might have changed for you. Of course you can look at that as a guideline or, point of reference to say, oh yeah, this is where we were in transportation last year. Do we anticipate it'll be the same, or will it be different?
Make sure you're having those conversations with the appropriate organization staff people. So Andrew gave the example of transportation. Make sure you've talked to transportation and that the rates haven't increased. Make sure that you're having the conversation with your business manager. Budgets that are done in silos that only have the director's eyes on them are the ones that we have the biggest changes and shifts in, surprises. Make sure that your business managers help you complete this process and are fully aware of the budget that you're putting forward.
And again, this is another reason why we're doing this in February, so then that way you guys have this time to make meetings with your teams to get this done. Because if you wait until May and June, life is going to be so hectic for your business managers that they're not going to want to do this. I mean, June is the worst time for everybody in the world, and except for kids because they're on summer break. But
and I can tell you, at least at the state level, our insurance costs are going up, and we're having to adjust our budgets accordingly. So make sure that you have had the conversations with your business managers and know what all those different rate changes are.
So perfect. And of course, we will go over this as a group, and we'll do a couple of fun activities with the budget workbook in Sun Valley. And but there it'll be more of the technical assistance of how do I handle this Excel sheet, and so really it's up to you guys to have these conversations of, oh, what am I going to put in this Excel sheet that I'm going to spend out? I mean, that's really up to you guys to decide what it is your program needs. So yeah, moving on to the next one. The other thing that you'll do is make your plan for what it is you're going to do. So looking at the statewide objectives, of the academic, enrichment, family and parent engagement, targeted services, continuous improvement, and summer program, if you offer summer program or if you are required through round 10, 11, and beyond. So starting to build that plan of, okay, what is it that we want to do? What activities do we want to offer? What's our calendar going to look like? How many days are we going to operate? Looking again at your original budget or your original grant and saying, oh yeah, this is how many students we're going to serve. Perfect. Be aware of those. Here's how many days we're going to offer, and so forth. And then looking at that, which a lot of it links up with the continuous improvement checklist, but making sure you're planning first family engagement opportunities, because really I think this is where those programs that really struggle is because they fail to plan for family engagement, is that they're taking life by the horns and it's towards the end of the year and they haven't offered anything. So start now to figure out, oh, what are we going to offer next year and when are we going to offer it? And then the other thing is similar with that is professional development of, okay, next year how many staff are we going to send to the After School Network Summit, to Prevention Conference, how many in-house trainings are we going to offer, and so forth. So start to look at that and build that plan. With that, that is it. I will be having a template that I will be sending out that'll look similar to previous years of the APR, where you're just kind of putting in that narrative, the justifications, and so forth. But really the...
From 208-43145.
Sorry, my wife's calling me. So the Compass reports, the budget workbook, the in-kind match, the letter of release of funds, and then the template that I'll send out is what we will look at for the APR. Something that we will not collect this year is the MOU that we collected last year, and that was just because I wanted to see what the MOUs look like. But of course, you still should have those in place. It just won't be turned into the SDE this year. Okay, so I will open it up for questions. And where did my question box go? We do have a couple of good questions. Okay, so if you are sunsetting, do you need to do your 2017-18 program operation plan? The answer is no. So you only, if you are sunsetting, if you're in round 7, your 5th year, all you have to do is close out your grant. Of course, If you are re-awarded, and your program continues, you will have to create that. But if you are not continuing with program, then you don't have to do anything for the future. You just have to close it out. Another question is technology deadlines for budgets, and the answer to that is no. That there is no request for technology anymore. However, looking at that budget revision that's due June 15th, it should be incorporated into that as well. So if you are purchasing new technology, it would be in that budget revision request that you make that's due June 15th. But in terms of is there a separate form or separate request that you need to make, and the answer is no.
With that question, I do just want to point out some situations that came up last year. We had a lot of people who were making large purchases, both technology, general equipment, right at the very end of the year, right there at that June 30th deadline. Problems were they did not get invoices in time for the September 15th deadline. Things were back ordered, came in late. Some people had to pay for it out of current funding because it didn't come in time to hit against last year's funding. So although there's no deadline any longer for the technology, for any items that you're purchasing, we strongly encourage you guys not to push that deadline. Get that information in as soon as possible so that we can get those budget revisions approved, and that so you can make those purchases early on so that you have everything that you need to make the request for the funding.
And the other thing with that is you submit budget revisions, and it does include technology, equipment, big purchase items. I will be looking at, Camille and I will be looking at the reasonableness and the necessity of that item. Again, this is why we've stressed to purchase these items at the beginning of the year, because then we can see, oh yeah, you've had it for this year, but we don't want to just flow money out the door to flow money out the door. I mean, really, we want to be reasonable with our money, and ultimately, the more that we save, the more that we can push out to the field, because I will warn you that there's just not enough money. There's not enough money. I'm aware that it's heartbreaking to see programs go off this year because there's not enough to go around, and I would say if I solely dictated all the funds, I believe we would have enough funds to have quality programs and serve the students that we currently serve.
And just so you guys are aware, we've always said that you always should ask for permission instead of forgiveness. Just be aware forgiveness is becoming few and far between. So we've had districts in the past that have had to come up with money for items that were purchased prior to being approved.
Okay, with that, I saved you 2 minutes of your life because it's only 11:13 and I am done. If there aren't any other last-minute questions. Oh, I will also say, I got one more thing. For those of you guys who signed up for the mid-year conference call with me and we went over the data, for a lot of you guys it's been a great eye-opener on both sides. Of some, we've been able to identify where there's some gaps in the data of, oh, some programs have only entered half their kids, or they skipped a couple of days, so we've been able to flush that out. So I would say it's been very valuable to me to go through and look at it. And then just for those who did not sign up for it, for those few, to go back on your own and look at your data to make sure that it's accurate. I know that I have a couple more next week scheduled, and it'll be a great time. So with that, we are done.
Thank you. Enjoy your weekend.